So let's just quickly run through the sequence of events. So Sally will do a little intro for us about what ACEN is and what we're all about. And then to keep everyone a bit engaged, we'll do a few Slido. I don't know if you guys have used Slido before, but we'll do a few Slido polls as we're going along. So I'll share the QR code that you can join in on those. And then Karen and her team will do a little presentation for us. And after that, we will have another Slido poll. And after that, we'll have the ABI team that will chat about their success stories that they can share with us. And then we'll close off the session with a bit of a Q&A. So any questions you guys have for the panel, we'll chat about that. And then lastly, we'll have a little Slido poll again, like Sally said, to gauge the interest of the audience to see what you guys would like to see in the coming webinars in the series.
Okay, thanks, Christo, for that. And just in terms of some logistics, this is a Zoom meeting as opposed to a webinar. So actually everybody who's in the room has actually got access to microphones and the chat box and full functionality. I do request, though, that if you are not speaking and one of our presenters at this point, please do keep your mic on mute. But there will definitely be plenty of time to have Q&A and open discussion. So I do welcome you to take part in those. We are recording the session, so we should be able to make the recording available after the event. And so without any further delay, I'd like to just give a quick overview of the African Circular Economy Network. As a reminder, for those of you who may not know, we are a non-profit company registered in South Africa, but based throughout Africa. So that's the difference here, is that whilst we might have our headquarters, so to speak, and the not-profits company status based in South Africa, we are definitely representing Africa as a continent as a whole. And the aim is to promote African circular expertise within the continent, and from Africa to the rest of the world. So it's really important that we try and get our voices out there. At the moment, we've got about, we represent, or there are a number of people on our database, and about 100 country representatives over 30 different countries. We are also connected to international circular economy networks. So becoming a member of the African Circular Economy Network has an amazing amount of opportunity to be connected and plugged into what's happening on the international space, as well as what's happening in Africa. So please do log on to the ACEN website, see some of the freely available resources and publications that are available on the website, especially case studies that exist already for the African continent, as well as upcoming events, and connect with us. Become a member of ACEN. This is how we get plugged in. So with that, I'd like to then move into the first Slido. Christo?
Okay, just give me a second to share my screen with you guys.
Sure. So, Christo, we also just need to, okay, so in the link in the chat box, you'll see the actual, thank you, Tashma, for putting that in there, the link to the Slido. And it was hashtag ACEN to participate. So if you're able to connect either on your laptop or phone, please do participate in the poll. Some interesting results coming through. Sustainability consulting very strong. FMCG, cosmetics, communications, waste management, international development. That's great. Okay, we haven't necessarily got everybody participating just yet, but it's still going up. NGO. Okay, based on the numbers that are in the room currently, this is probably where we'll stop. So it's great. Thanks for, it looks like we've got a nice variety of people in the room. And that's always good to see. Thanks, Christo.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
Okay, Christo, we hand over to Karen as our first presenter. And please, this floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sally, and thank you, everyone. I'm quite excited to be here in this space all together. I'm a sustainability consultant for the Rock Group, but also the lead for sustainable and inclusive business in Kenya. So 2 legs in 2 different continents, and looking at how we can bring that together. I am very happy that we can work together with African Circular Economy Network and with Sally and all her work that actually highlights what's going on in Africa on circular economy. And I can still remember a couple of years ago when we first met Peter, that there were just a few people here and there labeling themselves as a circular specialist or expert, and it was just all upcoming. And now look where we are now. I think we are really moving from a sort of a very new buzzword to a serious concept that people consider in how we can change the current systems that might not work so well for us. So today I would like to share with you what circular economy means on policy level, on business level, and on citizen level, and what kind of principles are actually circular economy, to break it down and to make it actually very tangible and not so complicated. I mean, it took us probably 10 years to get the term sustainability through in more than financial sustainability, and it's time that we just make this very accessible so we can work all together to a better and a new future economic model. So for that we have, and for that we actually initiated collectively a series to be very helpful, because not everyone can attend every day, and also because the circular economy has so many elements in it, because it includes the whole system, the whole economy, that there are many more topics that require maybe a deep dive. So this is the first, and let's set the right tone for this one. And hopefully we can continue having engaging conversations and planning action together as well. So for my first slide, it's not to bore you, but actually to make a bit more interesting than just seeing my face. Christo will put this up.
Is that the video that you want to play, Karen?
Yeah, I think that would be very nice to start with, and then I can explain more.
We have this misunderstanding of what Darwin really meant when he said survival of the fittest.
The whole Earth is actually one cohesive system, and we are screwing up the balance. This is going to change the world.
It's this incredible juggling act of the same materials over and over and over.
Life always put me where there were interesting questions to answer.
What in the natural world has already solved what it is I'm trying to solve?
The current system is linear. Circularity, you're trying to keep everything in the loop. There's no waste.
I began questioning how the economy operates. This is a turning point that's more profound than you realize.
Circularity is the only hope. This is the only way we can survive.
Thank you. For me, it was a bit shaky, the whole video, so I'm not sure whether that was for everyone. But to summarize it briefly is there's a trailer actually of a movie around circularity to do the same as what we aim to do today, to break things down and to make people understand that we're all part of one system and that actually everything is connected. And that sounds quite overwhelming, but on the other hand, also quite hopeful. So how does that work? A new economy for thriving businesses, for society really and planet. How does that? Okay. How does that really work? And what do we mean with that? There's, I think, still a video running. You're able to put this next slide. Yeah, so what are we talking about? It was mentioned before in that video, which was a bit breaking. At the moment, we have a linear economy. So we take resources, we make something out of it, we use it and then dispose it. Fairly irresponsible most of the time. And that's how we operate. And the whole business model lies within as much productivity and production as possible. So that is also a philosophy that will lead to products that are not so sustainable and do not last very long, because that's how we make money at the moment. Now, if you describe a recycling economy, you actually look at the end of the problem and think, oh, maybe we can recover or retrieve or recycle a few of those materials, which have become waste, into new materials or something that is of some value. That we call a recycling economy. And then we have the circular economy, where we say, no, the recycling is the last step in changing the system, because then we've already come to the end of life. What we want to do is that actually anything we take or the resources we use, they will stay in the loop forever. They will never become waste. And actually, they become food for another product. And that's what we call closing the loops. So we don't have to keep on taking new resources to actually create what we need. But if we do not, it's not usable anymore, we can at least start repairing it, reusing it after a different use. We can refurbish it, we can remanufacture it. And then last is recycling. So we also say that in the circular economy, there's a lot of new jobs that start with an R. So that's the new key. And also we will look into the renewable energy part of it, as well as the regenerative part for it. So this is what we like to explain a bit further. So we can go and look at the next slide. So the future economy, how does it look like? With the Ellen MacArthur Foundation being actually sort of the pioneer in collecting research and creating visions and papers and initiatives that drive us all forward and bring us together, we like to use their vision and their definition of circular economy. So Ellen MacArthur is the one behind that. And we say, it aims to radically limit the extraction of raw materials and production of waste. It does this by recovering and reusing as many products and materials as possible in a systematic way over and over again. And we use renewable energy to do so. Now, that is a very simple explanation of circular economy. So that is, I think, everyone sort of understands. But if you really think that through, then we have to change everything. And that's called system thinking. So we really need that. And we need everyone on board, not just a business, not just a citizen, not just an NGO, not civil society, not the government. Everyone needs to change. And so that's quite an overwhelming concept, but it's also a pool of an ocean of opportunities. But we need to start rethinking what we use, for which purpose, and how we deal with it afterwards. And the rethinking will lead to redesign, hopefully, and it will definitely need system thinking. There has a little video, but I'm not sure whether the video is that well working. So if it doesn't work really well, we can just skip it.
I can, thanks, Corinne. We're going to try and share it from my side. So, Christy, if you can stop sharing this presentation for the moment, and then I'll share the video, and let's please just give me an indication that the sound is working when you see it. Okay. Can't hear?
No sound, Sally.
No sound. Corinne, can I suggest that you carry on with the presentation?
Yeah, you can just play it and I will talk it through.
Okay, we can do that as well. Okay, good. There we go. Perfect. Let's do that.
Yeah. So system thinking actually brings everything together. So if you don't do system thinking, then everything are separate dots. And if we connect all those dots, we call that system thinking. And then we mean each and every dot. So what does that mean actually for us and for the planet? That means that we all are interconnected, and that we actually require simplification of our systems. Because now we grow food somewhere else in the world in fairly unsustainable manner, get half of it maybe across to the other side of the globe, and still are left with 40% food waste, and with people that don't have actually food. If you think about mustard, this is what they talk about in this video. A hot dog is a fairly complicated process if you look at the system, because it requires meat, but it also requires mustard, and the ingredients for mustards are not one. So they come from different countries and different situations, like the turmeric, the paprika comes from the Netherlands, the turmeric comes from India. So before we have made mustard, and that's just one ingredient of a hot dog, you have to consider, where does that grow? Where is this actually coming from? Where was this bread being made? So what do you put in your mouth? It has probably thousands of steps in a process before it becomes what we have on our plate. And that we all need to rethink, and that we call system thinking. So I think that's enough for this in terms of the explanation. You can see here that if you then pull out one element, then everything can fall apart. And that's what we've seen in the COVID situation. That's a linear economy. Products we actually didn't really need, the whole value chain would collapse overnight, because there was just one material coming from far away, which couldn't come, or we didn't want it, and everything collapsed. So a circular economy really looks at how can you create a system that works and that not necessarily grows, because in nature nothing grows eternally. It grows and it blooms, and then it will become food for the next round of life. So we also believe that circular economy is creating a thriving economy and not a growing, an eternal growing economy. So that is in short explained how this requires quite some system thinking. But once you get into that, it's actually quite exciting, to discover and rediscover where things are coming from and where your table is being made of, that it was actually a tree, and it provided you a tool to study and now to work and to learn things, and the tree and desk remains. So it gives you an ability to reconnect with what is around us, and also to realize that we are all just part of nature. So we are just an animal, a mammal actually, with the capacity of imagination. So we can imagine and create what we imagine, and an animal can't. And that's the only difference. But we should use it in a wise manner, this ability. So if we then run through the rest of the presentation, I would like to highlight also, and that's why it's so great that the African Circular Economy Network is bringing all the examples in Africa together, is that it is really time for Africa. Yes, we can learn a lot from people across the globe, but the context in Africa is different. And the context in Eastern Africa and Southern Africa are sort of similar, but even there we see that the context is different. It's time for Africa because we can actually leapfrog a lot of problems that we are not having yet. Or what the West already discovered and now actually has to restore, we can still avoid. There's a lot of adoption for new models and innovations. Africa has the most entrepreneurial mindsets in the world. Africa's big. We will have the biggest young population in 2050. It's all in Africa. We have actually worldwide ecosystem evolution. We are all coming from Africa, so that's even almost proven. So we are actually going back to our country or continent of origin. And there's an agility that we might not have in systems that are so almost rusty and so long existing. So we have a benefit with being in Africa and trying to change the world in Africa. So I just wanted to highlight that. And also it's a time that we step out of being the developing world and actually being the leaders on how we run businesses and what we can do as communities to actually drive circularity. And we see that those kind of innovations and ideas are coming alive much quicker than in the Western world, because there's also less complicated law systems and less already created problems to solve. So that's a hopeful message, and I really want to highlight it, especially in the COVID period. Also, we are actually so good in South Africa in the research that we're now being blamed for the next strain, which is actually not the case. It's just the very well experienced research teams in Africa. So I think it's time to change how we position Africa and what we can do. Now, to change, we always handle sort of this model. We say it starts with awareness and education. We need to make people understand, otherwise they don't understand why you have to change. Then you need to have innovations that can guide that. So if you don't have any solutions to the awareness you raise, then it becomes quite a depressing story. So we need to redesign, recreate, rethink, and then start a transformation process. And once we've done that, there is big space for investments, operations, and actually a new reality. So that's also why, for instance, the ROC Group and Sustainable and Inclusive Business work so closely together. There's from Europe, but also globally, the ROC Group provides circular economy courses, university masters. There's a lot of education, but also the business transformation. And where we meet in the middle is that a lot of the projects that transform actually areas in Africa are still projects, multi-stakeholder projects that give and show that this is possible before you actually achieve the business transformation. So this is a bit of the flow we use. The next slide. Yeah, so we use 3 principles of circular economy, and we will give some examples of that. We say, okay, basically circular economy doesn't have any waste. waste are just materials in the wrong space because they should have a purpose. They should never go to waste. So they were placed in the wrong place where they're being called waste. If I call my old phone waste, but someone else can still use it, then it should never be called waste. So I will explain a bit more about that. Regenerative models, a very simple terminology. Regenerative models actually means to make things better than how you found it. So it's nothing complicated. Then renewable energy, that's probably what everyone knows. Everyone can see windmills and sunshine and water streams coming up. But how to apply that actually to everything we do, not only showcase what the biggest windmill farms look like, but how does that actually influence our whole system? My colleague Ebenezer will handle that part. I will start with the waste. So in the waste and no waste, what will we say? We say, try and what is waste? If you think about it, what do you claim and call waste? You can't use it. A business doesn't use it for their production. It's a leftover. It's a part that's not being used. Now, to rethink that, do we need to create that in the first place? So that's a principle within circular economy. Do we need to create what we create in that specific way? Can we not improve the design of it so it doesn't leave us with leftovers? And if we can't, and it's actually a product we really need and it has a long life, but you still have some leftovers, is there a way we can use it before we recycle it? So can we use it for a different purpose before we say, let's recycle it? And with materials like a phone, it's quite easy to explain how can you actually design it to not throw your phone away, but to actually replace your battery. A lot of products we're using currently are not designed to repair. They're not designed actually even to be reused or refurbished. So we fundamentally have to rethink how we design to make that possible and to create jobs in that space. There's a lot of work to do. And also to create new market value and new marketing principles that allow you to have a very cool phone, and yet it's not completely new. In terms of policies, what kind of policies actually support the no waste or phase it out, or why would you waste it? I would like to highlight a few policies that are contributing to that, and also show that there's movement in this. So for instance, the extended producer responsibility, which is a fact or almost a fact, the legislation is being made in Kenya, and it's also there in South Africa. That actually imposes the responsibility, brings the responsibility back on the one that produces or uses packaging, and give that to consumers. So what do? You actually say, listen, you're the producer, you're making money out of this, but you're also being kept responsible for what is happening with that material. And that will create a new vibe around the fact that actually I'm going to the shop, I don't want to buy a packaging, I wanted to buy a broccoli. So why is it packaged in plastics? That I didn't ask for, but I don't have an option to buy the broccoli without the plastic. And to have an EPR in place, those are very basic examples, but to have the EPR in place will actually bring back the responsibility to the producer and the user of plastic packaging material, for instance, and they say, okay, we can't really collect this kind of packaging. It's really hard, so let's not use it at all. Or it's not necessary, so not use it at all. Or it is very necessary, but then we need to find a way that we can collect it and reuse it or recycle it. So an EPR really brings back the responsibility of rethink what we're using for what purpose. And it makes the business, the private sector and the businesses responsible for what choices they make. Another one is, for instance, Sustainable Waste Management Bill. It really looks at promoting a way more sustainable waste disposal practice. But we also have the single-use plastic ban in many countries, sometimes only for a few items, or most of the time for a few items, and in restricted areas. But on some items, there is a complete ban. For instance, in Kenya, we have a plastic bag ban. You cannot have plastic bags. The shopping bags you can get, which are feeling like fabric, but they aren't, that you can still get, but not, you have to mostly pay for it. And that helps to actually phase out items we don't really need, and they're causing a lot of pollution. Plastics Pact, there's one developed now in Kenya, there's one in South Africa, and there's one to be coming up in Ghana. So South Africa was the first on the South African Plastic Pact, Kenya the second, and hopefully Ghana is the third. We can look at, we see in policies tax waivers for recycling machinery. We see that a lot of countries have a national environmental management authority in place, and also strategies and sustainable development action plans are being shaped. So those are examples that actually help businesses to move towards a more sustainable and circular reality. Now, quickly some examples. For instance, Close the Gap. It's a company that operates both in Europe, but also in Kenya, and is looking at South Africa. And what they do is actually recovering devices, computers mainly, and avoid it becoming waste, giving it a second life, but refurbishing it in the countries where they actually resell it. And the resale value is based on what people can pay. So there's different levels for schools. So it not only provides avoiding waste by computers that are being used for 3 years by big companies like Deloitte, but it also provides access to devices. And in the end of that life, of the second life, they still would like to retrieve it back. So you can give it back and they will either repair or refurbish again, or ultimately dismantle all the components and then recycle that. Revolven is in South Africa trying to actually bring back fabrics to, so textile, your clothing, into fabrics again, which is not that easy, because in recycling and actually closing the loop, so bringing materials back to the same material that then becomes the same product, we have used so many different components in products that it's very hard to break that down and then to compose it again. So in recycling, a lot of the times, if we want to close the loop, we say, listen, please keep materials simple. So a water bottle in one type of PET, transparent, is much easier to bring back to the same water bottle than a green bottle of PET containing 6 different PETs, or clothing that has a combination of acrylic, so synthetic materials and cottons, for instance. It makes it harder to bring it back and to actually close the demand for that specific product. Lush, I think Lush, it might be a well-known example of soap that's naked soap, naked shampoo bars that you can buy, so you don't need the packaging anymore. We have nice examples in Kenya where we collect all the flip-flops and they become souvenirs, well sold, very good business model, because it's sold to American tourists mainly and they seem to love it. We also have Table Bay Mall in Cape Town, which is mainly built from recycled plastics and recycled materials. And then we have citizen initiatives. For instance, the Lonely Wheel did a campaign on listen, don't suck, meaning do not use a straw, so make sure you don't suck. And they had all these celebrities saying, I don't suck, or I suck. And that was quite triggering. So a lot of countries or cities in countries banned the straw. And with that, the citizens actually got what they demanded. We do not need a straw. Beach cleanups, bringing your own shopping bags instead of buying plastic ones, And asking for leaving your packaging at the door will all instill different behavior. So that's on the first principle of no waste. We can go to the next slides. Oh yeah. So you see, oh yeah, sorry, I'm looking at my notes at the same time. So there's still a lot of percentages to win in the whole of Africa if we talk about what's being collected in terms of plastics, what's being recycled. So we're still far, far away. So we better start rethinking, redesigning, and then creating a new reality. The next slide. Yeah, this is an initiative to raise awareness. So where we start being at the coast and showing people that your waste is actually just a material and you can create something else out of it, whether it's art or even a boat, or cooking oil that being converted into soap, which was a big hit when COVID came, and to provide everyone with bars of soap, which is made out of, disposed cooking oil. Next one. So the new jobs, they start with an R, we would say, in a circular economy. Either you redesign, rethink, or you repair, you come up with new reuse models, distribution models, or refurbish or recycle. So there's a lot to do. Next one. Yes, so now in the second principle, we look at regenerative models. And actually it's very simple, as what I said, it's positive only. So you make it better. You leave soil better than that you found it. You actually, if you do mining as a business, there's in most countries a rehabilitation law where you are supposed to restore the areas and rehabilitate. If you put in regenerative models, you actually do more than that. You say, this is the area I came in. I actually distracted materials. Those, unfortunately, you're not going to put back. But what is the purpose of it? So think about the purpose. But also, we have an example in Kwale on the coast in Kenya, where base titanium is being mined, but they investigated what the biodiversity was, put that in a nursery, and actually starting in specific areas of their mining site, creating nurseries that brought back species that were endangered. So in that biodiversity system, there were a few frogs missing, there were animals missing, and they actually are restoring that back. So leave it better than you found it. Obviously, mining is still quite a tricky topic because you do extract resources that you won't put back. But if you look at agriculture, you can do a lot. Land is still, we actually can restore weather patterns if we want to. We can increase soil and nutrition values tremendously by actually looking at having enough moisture, using only organic fertilizers, looking at cross cropping, putting in back actually systems that are there, agroforestry. Those are all examples that bring in, that make agriculture not a specific standalone sector, but integrated with nature. And that actually leaves us with much better food, also higher yield, and it will improve for everyone. I have a nice example on that, but I'm not sure how this video will play out, but this is in Egypt. It's a regenerative farm. The Rock Group has actually started a regenerative academy. They work with Spanish farm as an example, and you can also do your master there. You can come as a student and you really learn how and what it is to apply regenerative farming. But there's another example in Egypt, which we are partnering with, that actually turned half a desert into a really fruitful, blooming agri site. So I'm not sure if it works, otherwise we talk you through.
Can you see the slide saying greening the desert?
Yeah.
Great, let's try. Do you have sound? Do we have sound? No.
No. Then we can just keep it a bit brief and look at the pictures. Look at the picture. Okay.
Okay, wait.
Look at the
will
pictures.
wait a second.
Oh, I have sound.
Wüste, davon haben wir hier viel. Wovon wir wenig haben, ist fruchtbares Land. Um das zu ändern, verwandelt SECAM seit über 40 Jahren kargen Wüstenboden in fruchtbares Land. Und mit biologisch dynamischer Landwirtschaft sorgen wir dafür, dass der Boden auch nachhaltig fruchtbar bleibt.
Das ist heute wichtiger denn je. Fruchtbarer Boden wird immer knapper in Ägypten. 1977, als SECAM begann, hatte jeder Einwohner Ägyptens noch 600 Quadratmeter zur Verfügung. Heute sind es nur noch 300 Quadratmeter.
Ibrahim Abuleish, der Gründer von SECAM, hat diese Herausforderungen bereits vor 40 Jahren erkannt und die SECAM-Vision entwickelt. Mit SECAM wurde ein Wunder in der Wüste geschaffen, das vor 40 Jahren für unmöglich gehalten wurde.
Wir wollen weitere Wunder möglich machen und Wüsten in nachhaltige Oasen verwandeln. Auf unserer Wüstenfarm in Bahariya wollen wir 63 Hektar Land begrünen, also mehr als das 2000-fache der Fläche, die momentan pro Einwohner Ägyptens zur Verfügung steht.
Dazu brauchen wir zunächst Wasser. Das können wir aus Tiefbrunnen fördern. Um die kostbare Ressource Wasser nachhaltig zu verteilen, brauchen wir ein System, das möglichst effizient und ressourcenschonend arbeitet. Ein solches System ist eine Pivot-Beregnungsanlage. Es erlaubt uns eine optimale Verteilung des Wassers, um keinen Tropfen dieser wertvollen Ressource zu verschwenden. Weil wir wollen, dass unser Projekt nicht nur grün aussieht, sondern auch grün ist, setzen wir auf so viel Solarenergie wie möglich und sparen damit jede Menge CO2 ein. Zusätzlich binden wir CO2 durch unsere Bodenaufbauarbeit und die 10.000 Bäume, die wir rund um die neu entstehenden Felder pflanzen.
Kaufen, leihen, schenken. Diesem Motto folgt unser Finanzierungskonzept. Und wir drücken damit unseren Wunsch aus, dass wir mehr als nur eine Finanztransaktion mit Ihnen verfolgen.
Unterstützen Sie uns, unsere Wüste zu begrünen. Für 3 Pivot-Anlagen mit Solarenergie brauchen wir 400.000 Euro. Wenn Sie und einige von Ihnen je 1.000 Euro investieren, können wir schon im nächsten Frühling unseren Anbau beginnen.
Wir wollen, dass Menschen investieren, die wissen wollen, was mit ihrem Geld geschieht. Und wir wollen, dass unsere Geldgeber Teil unseres Projektes werden und das Projekt auf dem für Sie richtigen Weg unterstützen. Verfolgen Sie mit uns die Vision eines nachhaltigen Ägyptens und begrünen Sie mit uns die Wüste.
Thanks. I hope that was an inspiring example, and even within regenerative agriculture, you see that you require a lot to actually be completely sustainable and regenerative as well, because they work with renewable energy, and also they look at water, and that's another thing, like avoid waste, don't use more than you need, and if you have wastewater, can you bring it back and reuse it again? So I hope that was a good example of regenerative agriculture. In terms of, there are many laws and actually policies currently being driving that change. We see that from Europe on the Green Deal has a lot of components to really push for regenerative agriculture, and also within the COP26, but also in Europe in general, we finally have acknowledged that it's not a country change, but we really need to work together. So that's hopeful in terms of the policies to really, people and countries are starting aligning. In regenerative design, you have to, for instance, think of green roofs and skins. So if you build a building, can your climate control be actually done by nature, and therefore you don't require climate control systems like an aircon. And on top of that, you have a green roof and a skin that ensures less carbon emission, and that actually brings a positive. So you can even have a positive building and almost earning your carbon credits by having a regenerative design. But also in terms of water, can we recycle that? There are examples across the world, actually. Even years ago, we might not have called it regenerative design. At the university, I remember that there was rainwater flowing through the faculty and being used for all the toilets and washrooms in the same building. So those are actually regenerative models. And while it was flowing through the building, it had a cooling element. The other element is restoration, revitalization activities. I practice that word and I still can't say it, but revitalize. And it's really looking at, can you restore ecosystems, what I pointed out in the beginning, like in mining, and bring back lost biodiversity that should actually be there and contributes to our thriving new economy. Other examples are also that we are looking into a new way of feeding the world and creating proteins. So we see what's coming up is also looking at insects. We're also looking at black soldier flies. That sounds quite scary, but a very natural way to create manure and healthy soils and food for everyone. Regenerative design policies, there's an example on in South Africa, the South African National Standards and the Green Building Council as well. They all push for becoming more sustainable and in the end, circular. So those are examples of the regenerative models. And then I would like to invite my colleague Ebenezer to tell more about renewable energy, the third component of circular economy.
Thank you very much, Karin. We'll be heading to the next session, which is renewable energy. And basically you find that the basic thing here is we are looking at the components of circularity. As my colleague Karin mentioned, my name is Ebenezer Amadi, Program Manager for Sustainable Inclusive Business, which is a knowledge center under the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. So we will look at different perspectives on policy, a little bit of examples in terms of what is happening in the renewable energy space. And in essence, renewable energy is producing energy from renewable energy sources. And what we know is basically there is solar, wind, we have hydropower, biomass, which includes different components. We'll be able to have a quick look at that. Using an example, so use two examples, which is the Kenya and Rwanda. So if you look at the space in terms of what is happening, you realize that Kenya is working towards having about 60% of installed capacity from renewable energy sources, and by 2035. If you break it down a little bit, if you look at geothermal, hydropower, then you'll realize that the first one is hydropower at 52%, and wind is about 0.4%. What we have here just shows you generally the capacity in terms of megawatts and what the country envisions to reach by 2035. Just a quick look here, you'll see that there's an intention that Kenya installs a capacity of solar of about 852 megawatts by 2032, whereas for geothermal, its capacity is estimated to be 10,000 megawatts, but what's currently available is 1,449 and in terms of capacity in megawatts. If we look at the policy space and regulations, if we're able to move to the next, thank you. You will find that we have the Kenya National Energy Policy, which basically looks at ensuring that there is affordable, competitive, and sustainable supply of energy in the country, while looking at the aspect of protection and conservation of the environment. So this is a policy that guides the country in terms of what the government wants to see implemented on matters energy, but it also has some component in there on renewable energy. We also have the Energy Act, which basically is the act that then provides for the establishment of different institutions, like, for example, the Energy Regulatory Commission, as well as the Energy Tribunal and Rural Electrification Authority. So all these institutions then support the achievement of the spirit of the policy that we just talked about. The other two include the Geothermal Resource Act, as well as the feed-in tariff policy. So the feed-in tariff policy allows for electricity generation from renewable energy sources, and this is able to be sold to the off-takers. Okay. The next item here we will be looking at is in terms of what is included in the Kenya National Energy Policy. So generally, the Ministry of Environment and Forestry mentions that biomass produces about 69% of the country overall energy. And the policy also provides for the promotion of geothermal generation through efficient modular geothermal technologies. And then the other thing it also includes in there, or talks about, or speaks about, is the providing incentives to promote local production of efficient solar systems. And finally, with the quick highlights that we have, it also provides a framework for connection of electricity generated through wind, and this is able to be injected into the grid. So those are the policies that we have in Kenya. So looking at Rwanda, Rwanda has the Rwanda Energy Policy, which again also targets to reach 60% of electricity generated from renewable energy sources. And the vision is to do this by 2030. So looking at the quick highlights, what the policy envisions is to diversify power generation over time, so that there's an increased share of power from renewable energy sources. And then also looks at exploiting indigenous resources, for example, hydropower, solar, as well as methane gas. There's a component that it looks at, and in some of the challenges that it speaks about includes inefficient production of production and use of wood fuels, and in essence, what this then creates is destabilizes the biodiversity, which is not a good thing for our environment. But what the government looks at or speaks about in the policy again is that they're looking at financing some studies, so that's to be able to demonstrate projects that are innovative but have not yet been proven to be bankable or viable, so to speak. Okay. Now I'll give an example of an example of biochar, but this also touches on agriculture a little bit, just moving away from renewable energy sources. But of course, this process, you can also get pellets and briquettes. So in essence, what we're saying is that we promote gasification, which is low energy thermal conversion, instead of incineration. Of course, that we know what that creates. There's lots of emissions of green gases, and that is what we aim to reduce. So this particular example and the field trials that have been conducted show that biochar then has increased yields over time and persists for 10 years. That's equivalent of 10 growing sessions. If you look at the pictures shown there, if you see the first picture on your left shows that there's no input, and you can see the produce there is quite minimal. There's no harvest. And when you apply biochar, then you get some level of increased production. Now, the studies or the trials also tried to combine fertilizer, that's NPK, and biochar, and so that there was more or less variability in the grain yield. And this technology generally, what it does, it's useful because through this process, then you also try to reduce the emissions, but also to the soil, it adds, it's more a bit of benefit to the soil, because then it creates micropores in the soil and also improves on water infiltration. So we'll show you.
To save some time, can we maybe skip the video for now, or is it crucial? So I see we're running a bit behind time.
Okay, we can skip the, but we can do the video and skip the rest.
Okay, that sounds good. Perfect.
So this is an example of use of ethanol as renewable energy source.
The primary fuels in Kenya's cooking fuel market are charcoal, firewood, LPG, etc. But as Kenya gears towards a circular economy, there is need for businesses and even for us as citizens to start adopting clean fuel. But what is clean fuel? What would you say is clean fuel or clean energy? Today, I am joined by Sophie Odupoing, the Public Affairs Manager for Cocoa Networks, who is going to tell us exactly how cocoa fuel is providing an alternative clean fuel that is affordable and safe. Thank you very much for joining us. So, Sophie, what is Cocoa Networks and cocoa fuel?
Cocoa Networks is a technology company that operates out of Kenya. That seeks to provide transformative solutions to solve a lot of the problems facing people in sub-Saharan Africa. And one of the areas where we have started this is specifically within the cooking sector. Our founders took recognition of the fact that people use firewood and charcoal, which leads to deforestation. And realized this is not sustainable. In the long term, we need a solution that is sustainable, that addresses SDG 7, providing clean cooking fuel for people in a sustainable manner. So that is how they innovated and came up with a product that we call cocoa fuel, which is a combination of a cocoa improved cooker and cocoa fuel, which is bioethanol.
Thank you. So I think I'll leave it at that. Just to probably finalize is the other aspect we're looking at is also the behaviors from the citizen and their contribution, which includes behavior change in terms of adopting some of the innovations and technologies that we have that are promoting less emissions of greenhouse gases and use of more renewable energy sources. Thank you.
Thanks, Ebenezer. Sorry to cut you short. I think with some of the technical glitches that we've been experiencing today, it means that we've kind of wasted a bit of time on those. So thanks very much, and apologies for cutting you short. It's really a privilege to have partners like we do on this particular webinar today, like SIB and ABI. So, you know, we really do appreciate your time and the effort that you put in to do these presentations. And so when we have a couple of technical glitches, thank you for rolling with the punches. So over to our ABI colleagues, and thank you again for being present with us today. I will hand over to you guys to take us through some amazing innovations and projects that you have been involved with as well. So thanks very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Sally Ann. And thank you everyone for the opportunity to speak with you here today. We're really excited about this series and the potential that it holds. And to everyone on the call, thank you so much for making space for myself and Raisibe to speak with you today. By way of introduction, my name is Alyssa Uester. The next slide will explain a little bit better about what we do and who we are. But I am the Zone or Africa Sustainability Manager for AB InBev, responsible for water stewardship and smart agriculture.
Thanks, Alyssa. Likewise, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you all. My name is Raisibe, and I'm the Sustainability Manager at AB InBev. I'm responsible for circular packaging, climate action, and partnerships.
Great. So to start this in a bit of context, you'll see our backgrounds here. We just want to first explain our 2025 sustainability goals. At AB InBev, we're building a company to last the next 100 plus years. And so we know that brewing great beer, for example, depends on a resilient natural environment and thriving communities. And so we've committed 2025 global goals that align with United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and on target areas where we can drive the greatest impact in the communities in which we operate. They comprise 4 pillars, each of which has ambitious associated commitments and initiatives of which we're really proud. And they include circular packaging, where we commit by 2025 to have 100% of our product in primary packaging that is either fully returnable or made from a majority recycled content. Smart agriculture, where we commit to ensuring that 100% of our direct farmers are skilled, connected, and financially empowered. What this means is that we'll ensure that they have certified quality seed, they also receive agronomic advice, and they have access to financial products and risk mitigation solutions, to name a few of these initiatives that form part of those goals. Of course, water stewardship is quite an integrated response. Before we go there, water stewardship is a bit of an integrated response where we drive internal water use, efficient discharge and effluent reuse. And of course, we commit to ensuring that 100% of our communities and high-risk sites beyond our brewery gates also have a measurable improvement in water availability and quality. And all 3 of these tie into our climate action and 4th pillar, which states that 100% of our purchased electricity will be from renewable energy sources and will have a 25% reduction of carbon emissions across our supply chain. And so what we'll do here today is we'll show you a couple of examples of how we've integrated our 4 pillars within our sustainability goals into tangible solutions and projects. And one of those, if you go on to the next slide, is a way that we've combined smart agriculture and water stewardship. And it's something we're really, really proud of. And this is a project Imifino. It's a project, next slide, on the at our Ibai brewery in the Eastern Cape in South Africa, that has got quite a bit of attention. And for us, really, we can't shout louder about this because it's a perfect example of how we've been able to create that circular economy. The next slide will explain a little bit of detail around the background. And it's really, for us, important to appreciate the history and the amount of years that went into this particular project. 13 years worth of research led by Rhodes University was supported by the thought leadership of our Ibai brewery and funded in part by the Water Research Commission, where we drove the objective of converting our brewery waste streams through sustainable technologies into value-added products and outcomes. And so we constructed an artificial on-site wetland, as well as a research tunnel where many graduates and postgraduate students did their research on our brewery effluent water and worked on hydroponics such as algal ponding and aquaponics, to name a few. Of course, the proof of concept and the successful proof of concept here was what provided that opportunity for us to commercialize. And so on the next slide, we actually show you the next step we took on this journey, which is the commercialization of that initiative. And that is what we've called Project Imifino. Here at the beginning of the year, we really were ambitious and excited to take this work further, and we developed a commercial 2,000 square meter drip irrigation system. And so what happens in essence is that our brewery effluent water that would conventionally be rerouted back to our on-site reverse osmosis plants and our filtration systems would then have an intermediate water user, which is the spinach beds. And using this drip irrigation system in these raised beds, you can see in the images below, we're able to actually flood the system and harness that locked-in nutrient potential of our brewery water. And so the crop takes the water and the nutrients that it requires, and the rest is then able to be collected at the end of our beds and sent back into our conventional system. And so from what would normally be deemed as a waste stream, we're actually be able to create a value-added outcome. And that's the unique value of this project, is that all the nutrients and water requirements are fully provided for by the wastewater in our brewing process. And so there's no additional requirements for this or fertilizers. The next slide will show you images of this really powerful image of our team that implemented this. And this is what we're really proud of. This is Tailor-Made Water Solutions, our local partner. They are at the forefront on the left-hand side is Dr. Richard Taylor. He's one of those students that did his postgraduate studies in the research channel on our brewery effluent stream. So what a wonderful story it is for us to be able to take the researcher and help him become the business owner. Together with his team here, they constructed this artificial wetland. I beg your pardon, they constructed these raised beds and subsequently developed the downstream agricultural business. And what's really great here is we've got a first of its kind for breweries in Africa. We're demonstrating that complementary process of water users and maximizing the local benefit of water. We have a platform for the continuation of research and development with the University of Rhodes. The key point of this is that we're harnessing that nutrient potential that's locked in our effluent, turning it into a tangible outcome and output. And then there's that job creation aspect that's really exciting for us, where we've been able to start up and support the startup of Tailor-Made Water Solutions with a 2 million rand downstream value creation every year. The individuals you see here previously did not have any agricultural background or know-how, and now they're able to grow not only spinach, we've started to diversify the crop and include different opportunities for them. And what we see here as the really exciting opportunity on the next slide, you'll see a bit of the scaled effect, is that we want to take this 2,000 square meter drip irrigation system and this farm, we want to be able to scale it and replicate it across other sites in Africa where we have high water risks in the community. We want to leverage this technology and innovation to reduce our internal water use. And of course, we want to be able to take local community members and provide them with the sort of job creation that has value for them and the community as a whole. And so really the challenge for us is to continue such work, and hopefully we can showcase more Project Imifinos in future. Thank you.
Thanks. So over to circular packaging and climate action. So at AB InBev, we are always thinking about ways to innovate consumers' first point of contact with our products. So while primary beer packaging hasn't really evolved over the decades, the broader beverage packaging landscape is evolving to respond to the changing consumer demand. So for us, we're constantly looking for ways to increase the recycled materials in our packaging, to increase recycling rates through the recovery and reuse of materials, to reduce the amount of material we use in our packaging, and obviously to educate consumers on the importance of recycling. So having said that, and just to emphasize, by 2025, our goal is that 100% of our products will be in primary packaging that is returnable or made from majority recycled content. And then furthermore, within our climate action goal, which is that 100% of our purchased electricity will come from renewable sources, and will also reduce our carbon emissions across our value chain by 25%. So this means that we are improving our brewing efficiencies to reduce our carbon footprint. We're changing our packaging. We're changing our fuel type to a greener solution with less CO2 emissions. We're increasing the capacity of our trailers so we can do less loads. That way the emissions per loads become less. So those are the ways in which we are trying to achieve these targets. Next slide, please. So having said that, at a business level, what is our strategy? Our strategy is to drive our goals, and how we do that is, number one, through innovation. So this means recreating and redesigning, coming up with smart but relevant initiatives for our business. We also do this via brands. So leveraging the existing brands that we have in our portfolio, be it Eagle Lager or Hansa or Budweiser, using brands for that consumer-facing aspect. We also do this through the accelerator. So this is a global program which plugs in startup businesses to bring real solutions to our business. And lastly, we also do this via partners, leveraging foundations, leveraging developmental banks to really push our sustainability agenda. So that's our strategy. And I hope that, as we continue in this presentation, you'll be able to see examples of how we've implemented initiatives across our continent. So in Lusaka, Zambia, waste infrastructure has struggled to keep pace with the growing population. This means post-consumer packaging waste remains largely uncollected or in drains. And so the majority of Zambian breweries, which is our business that falls under AB InBev, produces one-way packaging material, such as disposable cartons and plastic bottles, which are often difficult to collect and recycle. So this was when Zambian breweries became leaders of the industry and proactively established what is known as Majapumotsi. This was established in 2015, which is a post-consumer waste program aimed to improve sanitation, hygiene through the process of cleaning up waste, particularly clear and color PET, HDPE, cartons, and now it has even expanded to aluminum cans, LDPE, cardboard, and paper. And so through this initiative, as you can see on the left, we've been able to launch in 14 districts in Lusaka. We've been able to support 11 aggregator sites, of which 5 are female aggregators. We've been able to reach 13 schools and educate 9,113 adults. So again, emphasis on that consumer, education point. And in total, we've actually been able to collect about 14,000 tons of recyclable materials. So here's an example of how we produce and place product onto the market, and then ensure that we create a circular economy for our waste from post-consumer waste. Thank you. Next slide. So prior to any regulation in Tanzania, we have completely removed PET from our production lines. We've mothballed the equipment and started packaging Grand Malt, which is a nutritional malt, non-alcoholic beverage in cans, which are now recyclable. So we're constantly evolving our packaging to reduce its environmental impact by increasing the use of cans. And again, to our point around strategy, innovation is key on the mission towards closing the loop and eliminating waste. So for us, this is truly, a milestone towards increasing recycling rates and driving a more circular economy. We have a responsibility to help solve the global plastic waste crisis. And we're leveraging our scale and reach across markets to reach our sustainability goals, to suppress waste pollution, and to obviously reduce our carbon footprint. So again, here's an example that investing in sustainability will ensure that we have packaging of the future and ensure that we create those circular economies. Thank you. Next slide. And in South Africa, Corinne mentioned earlier on EPR, which are regulations, which stand for Extended Producer Responsibility. So there are many regulations that must be met by an EPR scheme and PRO on behalf of its members. This includes determining a fee for packaging materials placed on the South African market, and to meet scheme objectives, so that includes annual minimum recycling targets, life cycle assessments, waste picker obligations, amongst other requirements. So at AB InBev, we are focused on ensuring we are compliant by covering our imports and our one-way packaging materials. This has been done. We've joined existing PROs in the industry, and we're also focused on our returnable system, our returnable glass system, which is intricately integrated into our business. So for us, we will use EPR as an opportunity to, find gaps, in our outlier areas, find local waste pick initiatives to plug in, to partner with PROs to ensure we have accurate collection and data, or even look for opportunities to redesign our packaging. So for us, we want to ensure that there's effective and efficient management of product at the end of its life and implement circular economy initiatives beyond the packaging. And this is what we're learning through this journey, is that our efforts need to span the entire value chain to ensure that every touch point is geared towards a greener and a more sustainable future. So let's pause for a second. This is a very fun interactive tool, but I'm not sure if people actually know their day-to-day usage. So happy for you to scan the code. The link will be available in the text, in the chat. But in your own time, check what your actual usage is. We all have an impact on our environment, and again, leveraging our brands. Corona has taken this, as an opportunity to educate our consumers and to give you the tools to be able to understand how your day-to-day activities are impacting our environment. And then in the climate action space, again, we are committed to sourcing 100% of our electricity from renewable sources using the following 3 guidelines. So we look at additionality. So this means we're adding new sources to the grid, putting new facilities, which will obviously come from different sources. And then we also look at proximity, right? So this talks really about, on-site, off-site, near-site, depending on the grid reliability. And then we look at various renewable sources. So we are constantly as a business exploring the different energy sources as defined by RE100. Next slide, thank you. And so I think what you've probably gathered from our presentation is that sustainability has certainly become our business. This is becoming more relevant as we are driving reputation and a better world. We have done this by switching to brew Castle Light with renewable electricity, which is incredibly exciting. This means that we are attributing the electricity generated from solar and biogas facilities at our 7 breweries in South Africa to brew Castle Light, which is your local favorite, or at least for today, should be your local favorite. And again, this is an example of how we can brew our brands with renewable energy, but also close the loop by making sure our packaging, be it glass and cans, is recyclable. So for us, this was a fantastic collaboration between our colleagues in procurement and supply and marketing. And we'd love to show you this, short video of this journey.
We're switching to renewable electricity. To brew this, that means more electricity for game time and showtime. They get more electricity. Yo, I can't, my boy. And everyone gets less of these. Hey, what the? Because we're using less electricity from the grid, there's more for this, more for them, and all of us. Switch to renewable. Switch to Cost Light.
Thanks, Christo. I think just in closing, I mean, for us at a corporate level, we are on this journey. We haven't created circular economies for everything. So by no means are we there yet, but we have new initiatives. We have a lot of pilots, you know, in the continent. We've engaged with industry members. We've leveraged expertise from our global colleagues. And I think that's what will put us on the road to being circular. Thanks.
Well, I mean, yeah, thanks, Raisibe and Alyssa. I think it definitely shows what big commercial business can actually do in this space. And it's actually quite, for me, it definitely feels like if you can do it, it can inspire so many more to also start and do something. So I thank you for your presentations. And I'd like to, we do have a couple of questions that have come through in the chat box. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through a couple of those and direct, but also open it up to our panel. And if anyone who's present who hasn't added a question yet, you can also just raise your hand as well. That's not a problem either. So just maybe taking it back to Ebenezer and Corin's presentation, a question from Yeta Tech, and perhaps please excuse me if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. What details do you have about biomass biofuel energy for household use and transport? I understand there is invasive alien species that can be used for biofuel. Are there any new directions on this, both from policy and business perspective? So open to anybody, but I think Corin and Ebenezer, if you'd like to maybe take the first stab. Corin's disappeared. Ebenezer, it's over to you.
Thank you for the question. So in terms of biomass and biofuel, I'll give you an example of what now we have is biodiesel, where people are trying to produce biodiesel from used cooking oil. Actually, one of the examples that I would have given is a company in Kenya that's called Zijani. So what they do is they try to adopt a circular economy concept into their processes. But the challenge is that there is need for more research on biodiesel, because then there are limited machinery that can use the biodiesel. What currently the producer sells to flower farms, and they use it to power generators or the tractors. So that's the limitation as of now, what is happening in Kenya. Now, if you look at fuel from biomass, again, there are you can make briquettes or pellets from organic waste. That is, then you have to also combine it with some other products. You can also use sludge to make pellets and briquettes. If you go further into the value chain, then you can also produce soil amendments. That's something equivalent to fertilizer. But then also research is needed to look at the level of safety. There was a project that was being implemented in Kenya again, called Nakuru County Sanitation Project. So what they did, they conducted some research and were able to pass through the Kenya Bureau of Standards, and they ideally went to the market. And the challenge there again was behavior. I mean, the perception of the public in using briquettes and pellets made out of sludge. So that means that there would have also been a challenge in using the fertilizer. But of course, now there is a little bit of change. They have to use behavior change communication. So in ensuring that the public are aware in terms of the processes of the production and also the quality of standards and the certificates that they received from the Kenya Bureau of Standards. I don't know if there was a third part of that question, if I answered all of it.
No, I think that's great. It does give us a good overview. And I think where we are as well, I think we do have a little ways to go, especially with alternative fuel use at the household level. But yeah, certainly in South Africa, we are seeing a little bit more uptake of AD, especially low scale, smaller scale AD as well, which is going to be interesting. So not necessarily just for biodiesel, we've almost come and been through that phase, but yeah, it's interesting to see the developments. Thanks, Ebenezer. There is a general question, but I first from Tim Marshall, but I'm going to come back to that one because I want to just pose one to ABI because I see we are running a bit short on time. So it's from Pietra from EEB, and he says, thanks very much for the presentations. The question is, what is your assessment of the possible rollout of deposit return systems for packaging in countries you operate in Africa? That's a nice big question.
Okay, very much so. So we really pride ourselves on the fact that for most of our markets in Africa, we do have returnable systems in place. And even then we focus efforts on increasing recycled content percentages. And so the target is to have majority so that I think ICB can confirm this, but I think for most of our markets, we're already very close to 50%. And so that includes our returnable and our non-returnable glass. But again, big focus for us in Africa. It's one of the zones in AB InBev where we're really proud of how strong our returnable system is, particularly on our primary packaging, which is, for the most part, it is glass. And where we do have PET, we're focusing efforts there too on creating and driving that circular economy, which is in our Ghana and Nigeria markets. Small margins, small volumes, but still the onus is on us to drive that circular economy downstream as well.
Thanks, Alyssa. And does that mean, just a follow-up question from my side, in terms of the PET in Nigeria and Ghana, does that mean you're actually looking at returnables for PET in those sectors?
Gets a little bit difficult,
yeah,
returnable,
yeah,
because of the whole food grade aspect of it. So if we can't do that, we aim to have the majority recycled content, and that's why we've got a goal that has the either or if we can't achieve both. So for glass, definitely, for most parts we are able to do majority returnable, otherwise majority recycled content. But where it is PET, it's tough because of infrastructure challenges in Upper Africa.
Yeah,
but we have started, and I think you could just watch the space. We should be able to communicate very shortly or soon about some successful trials that we're having in Ghana to drive that. A long way to go, and we're always open to those partnerships, to ICB's previous point. But yes, we would then probably look at recycled content in preforms.
Excellent. We do have a follow-up question. So Tim, sorry, I'm going to come back again to your question. Just bear with us for a second. But there is a follow-up question from Michelle Goddard about how the returnable system actually works. Maybe just a quick rundown for us here.
So apologies. I think, I'm just assuming everyone knows how our deposit system works, but theoretically, post-consumer consumption of our returnable bottle, they would then be incentivized to return it at a point of sale, and they would get some sort of incentive. I think in the South African context, the R1, I think, Rasibi?
150.
R1.50.
Yeah.
There we go. So R1.50 for every returnable bottle. That's the incentive to drive that post-consumer waste collection. And then we obviously would then reintegrate it into our returnable bottle strategy and system.
And with that, part of the incentivization, and I think also part of EPR, right, is going to be, finding those opportunities to, find outlier areas, work with local waste companies to be able to, incentivize our consumers to take, the returnables back, circulate them back into our system. So a lot of work is going to be done. And obviously with EPR, we'll be looking for a lot of those opportunities to scale those gaps.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. I think it's it's very insightful and really good to hear about the rollout of additional returnables coming in the near future, which is really, really great. And really interesting for me to see how quickly you were able to change in Tanzania from PET bottles to cans. Interesting and such a quick turnaround. So the question from Tim that I keep saying I'm coming back to, it's from Tim Marshall, and he says, are there any easy, immediate changes that can be made to policy or processes that will lead to greater sustainability, the low-hanging fruit, so to speak? So I think that's open to each of you. So if each of you could, maybe provide a little your opinion on that one. Should we start with Karen, and then only because you're on the left of my screen, and then we can move across.
Yeah, that's fine. So it's a question specifically asking for policies that can help. On the low-hanging fruit, you can actually quite quickly have tax waivers, for instance, on recyclable, like recycle machinery. On a quick win, you can also look at changing, for instance, laws on waste transportation. So we have quite a lot of waste transportation laws that are complicating matters. So if you want to have that deposit system where you want to bring back the bottle, but it's being labeled in a policy as waste, then you have you can't bring it back as non-waste, and that will have different. So those are specific things. If you look at what is working in a system, also you can promote fairly quickly. You could promote sorting at site initiatives and having benefits for their in terms of tax as well. So those are, I think, the quick wins. I mean, setting up the EPR system, to implement it smoothly is not so easy. I mean, it's not a super low-hanging fruit. I mean, the low-hanging fruit in that policy is probably that businesses start proactively solving issues, while a lot of infrastructure in Africa is not yet in place for it. So the whole system relies completely on the private sector, but it will instill motivation to start acting. So those are low-hanging fruits in terms of policy, I would say. And also, I think really think differently about your collaterals or your risks assessment in terms of what kind of financial benefits you provide to people. And let's move away from that old value system. And there, in my opinion, are more or less the quicker wins, although policies might not always be quick.
Yeah.
Unless it's a ban, can happen overnight.
Yeah, it's true. Thanks, Karen. Alyssa?
I don't know if you can ever really have a low-hanging fruit or a quick win when you're trying to draw and drive honest and long-standing sustainability. But I think what's prevalent for us is that the collaborative effort is really something that does that. And it sounds very high in the sky, but having such platforms as this, where we have the opportunity to bring together so many different stakeholders, and where we all of us just for a second remove our individual hats and we see what is the common goal that we're trying to achieve here, and identify those gaps and opportunities. I think that's really what we need more of. We need more of these sort of engagements, but we need to have governments sit in these calls, and we need to have all stakeholders, including the community members' voices, present and able to be voiced to identify what are the problems that we all face and how do we solve this together. So I really strongly want to drive that collaborative opportunity. I think that's something that we should take action on.
Quite right. Collaboration can't be understated. You're absolutely right. Raisibe, over to you.
Yeah, and I think to that, I mean, for us as a business, we've just recently appointed a chief sustainability officer at a global level. So, and she's amazing. And I think that definitely sends a, statement out to the market and even to us as a business. He's directly, reporting into our global CEO. So here we have someone who's really driving our sustainability agenda and really driving it, all the way down, even into, the countries. So again, I think that's that's an opportunity to show government, to show consumers, right, that when we say sustainability is our business, we mean it, we're serious.
That's a really nice development to hear about, actually. Yeah, that's great. Ebenezer, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Ali. I'll break it down into two levels. So I look at the policy in terms of the corporate company policies and strategies, and the country level. Now, at the company level, then you have to look at our value chains and processes. So where can we be able to eliminate waste in terms of wastage of resources? So efficiency in being included in there. The other component on sustainability is also inclusion of people at the bottom of the pyramid. So are we also giving opportunities for people to supply our products? The other angle of sustainability then is also our contribution to the environment. So how our products, right, contributing to us having a better environment. Case example, if your product then is hazardous to the environment or is having some negative impact based on the packaging. If you look at what has been spoken here, the Epa Regulations, it basically applies on the principle of polluter pays, right? Meaning that the obligation of your product post-consumption. That is the level of a company. At the national level, I think policies normally take longer to view the different regulations. In Kenya, if I give you an example, the EPA Regulations 2021, we almost thought it would be over last year. It's not yet complete, but now we're anticipating it probably next year, February, it will be done. But it's a great one because then we had 19 waste streams, but now they're calling it product streams, which will be brought down to 5. So at the national level, the other thing that I will recommend is to incentivize innovations. And this could be through tax holidays, or necessarily not that, it could be also through the procurement of the government, looking at the demand side, right? And they say that the government is the greatest buyer of commodities and services. If you look at the budgets, so if you influence what you require, the companies will change what they're producing. That's my take. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And yeah, I think they're all aligned and slightly different and nuanced, which is great, because that's exactly why we have experts like you on these types of calls as well, to share those insights and views. So thank you very much for that. We have thanks Tim for asking the question. So Charmaine has a comment about coalitions and industry partners are invaluable in making big wheels turn faster. Where similarities exist between the various partners, there is a common goal, and involvement is mutually beneficial and collaborative, which drives compliance to goals. Absolutely, Charmaine, couldn't agree with you more, 100%. We do have Funto Barofis wanting to reach out, so please do check the chat box and see if there are any opportunities to reach out and maybe connect with Funto. Thanks very much, Funto, for putting it out there. That is the reason why we have these webinars as well, is to make these connections and grow the network and potential opportunities. So thanks for that. Tashma has a couple of questions for ABI directly. What are your views on private sector's responsibility in terms of water? I think it's either water or waste stewardship. Tashma, I'm not sure if it's, because there's a typo there. So it could be waste, but it could also be water stewardship. Let's do both. And the second question is, what opportunities are there for EPR in the South African context? So okay, she clarified it's water.
Okay, so I'll cover the first question.
Right.
Really, there's so much to unpack in terms of water stewardship. Something we haven't really touched on in this particular webinar is the impacts of nature-based solutions. And that's something we drive really, really strongly and focused efforts across Africa, where we've witnessed the tangible and measurable impacts of nature-based programs in Africa and how they can promote livelihoods, health, and biodiversity. And those co-benefits to people and nature are so vast and limitless, especially when we're dealing with alien invasive clearing and how that impacts watershed improvements. Through the development of SMMEs is another way that these programs bring that beneficial and livelihood aspect and component to it. And so with that in mind, I think when we talk about water stewardship, what's imperative and the onus for private sector is to understand firstly their water impacts and the risks in their own water usage and engage in that water stewardship effects and if it's focused on those measurable impacts. So for us, we do drive annual risk reviews in all of our sites to understand our reliance on water, and not just at a site level, but at a catchment level as well, recognizing where we have availability risks, quality risks or regulatory risks as well. In addition to that, I think private sector should be promoting nature-based solutions as a critical part of their integrated response and to deal with the shared water challenges that are faced by communities, business, and economies. And they should incorporate that into their sort of strategy. So it's not just driving our optimization of our internal water use, but it's really looking at a more broader basin or catchment level. And of course, using our influence and scaling that. So I think that's also really important to be able to leverage influence and scale the effects and potential effects of nature-based solutions, for example. And as a business, we always like to call on private sector colleagues to join our fight and drive that collective action to scale up the efforts and the impacts that we've seen. One of the comments that the chat was also about the potential alien invasive vegetation. And we actually are investigating in Uganda using water hyacinth and the clearing of water hyacinth and perhaps reusing that, creating a downstream business for the local communities to turn that into some sort of biofuel or circular economy that will generate income. And so that's now where we've taken our invasive clearing activities as an example and how we're trying to constantly drive it for the next 100 years and not just our immediate involvement. So a lot said there, but I think the key point is that it has to be a call to action. You have to, as private sector, take that stand and be committed to being in it for the long run.
That's great. Thanks, Alyssa. Raisibe?
I think opportunities for EPR, I think Karen and Ebenezer have stated that. I think the first couple of years for EPR in terms of implementation is definitely going to be a difficult one, but I think it's also going to be a collaborative, effort between, government, industry, stakeholders, PROs, suppliers, yourselves, right, retailers. But for us as a business, I think just some of our ideas is that, we're looking for ways to, implement potentially a post-consumer waste program to support, outlier areas where, there's minimal reach in those areas. I think for us, we'll also use it as an opportunity to potentially even redesign our packaging, right? Yeah. So whilst we do have, high recycled content in our bottles and cans, there's always an opportunity to just go back into the drawing board and come up with something completely new that is, far more sustainable. And then I think we'll also probably take this opportunity to really engage with our suppliers and leverage, the prices that we sell to them for our cullet, to fund potentially a circular initiative. So there's a lot of thinking happening, nothing set in stone, but I think we're excited and we welcome this change. And we're just obviously excited to engage with various stakeholders in the industry as we navigate this journey that is our.
And I'm glad you said navigate the journey because it is going to be one. Absolutely. So I just want to call on last round for questions. Any last minute questions from our audience? Otherwise, I'm going to start closing, and I'm going to just ask our presenters just for their final word for the day, maybe for us to take away and remember before we do one more Slido. So please don't disappear just yet. We would like your input on some of the future webinars and some of the trends that and deep dives that you want to see being discussed in later webinars. So before we go, just quickly from our presenters, a final word and we'll start with Karen again, left to right on my screen. Karen, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm going to keep it very short. I'm really happy that we brought this all together and that we're here together. So I think that's great. And that's also, it's a great statement. We have private sector, we have NGOs, we have other initiatives, educational institutes. So I think it shows that we all know that we have to do it together, and that's I'm very happy about. I would like to, but I think you have that in a question. I would like to ask the other question, like what was new to you, or what would you do tomorrow? What inspired you most? What do you need to know? What is very still complicated? What would you? I have a lot of questions actually to the audience. in order for us to actually work much better together and say, oh, but we are doing this because there's so much to share. Like what I said before, as the ROC Group, there's so many programs we can collectively run to contribute to circular economy together. As SIB, there's so many waste stream projects and studies being done and reports being written, but also the Kenyan Plastic Pact and all that can tie into initiatives. So please let us know in the chat and in that what your takeout is, what you need, what you don't understand, what you do understand, what you're going to do tomorrow for us to actually work much better and efficient together and really, speed actually up the transition.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. So if we don't, because the slider, we were going to fit another slider in, but we kind of ran a little bit out of time. So please, as Karen mentioned and rattled off all of those questions, just drop it into the chats. I think that would be really helpful for us. Ebenezer, from your side and the ROC Group and SIB, last words for us today.
Thank you so much, Sally. Putting out the my last words in 1 minute is very difficult.
That's the challenge.
Let me attempt. So yes, so looking at the different countries, I think we also see lots of similarities. What I just seen from South Africa, Zimbabwe, Tanzania. We've been conducting a research in Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Malawi on waste, and we also saw some similarities through this trends. So you see that the organic waste is basically the highest. So what does that tell us? We can basically learn from each other, and what works in a particular context area. For example, if it's in South Africa, could be used also in Kenya. For example, the South African Plastic Pact was the first one to be launched in Africa, and now we have the Kenya Plastic Pact. So it means that we can leverage on this network to share knowledge. That's one, and see progressively what are some of the challenges that we have that we can attack. I would recommend through this great network that we can start some partnership on looking at the policy. So someone asked, what are the low-hanging fruits on policy? So if you can do a quick assessment on the policies in different countries, let's say Zimbabwe, Zambia, South Africa, Tanzania, and Kenya, then we can share similarities on the low-hanging fruits, because I know research then informs policy better. We call that policy. I forget the word. It's basically using your findings of the research to influence policy, and that's what this great network can do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and you kept that nice and short. Alyssa, over to you. Final words.
So I think, we've really summed up what we believe and how our business stance, as we really believe that sustainability is our business. But business aside, we recognize that the success of any business is rooted in local communities and economies. And again, as the world's leading brewer, we really do look forward to driving real measurable impact and a more sustainable and inclusive future. And I think to Raisibe's point earlier, we are still far from where we want to be. And so we welcome innovation, we welcome thought leadership, we welcome engagements, and we want to be able to leverage that and harness the power that sits in Africa. That's really what we are trying to get and ascertain from such engagements and additional ones, is what is happening in the space that we haven't even heard of, and how do we get involved, and how do we tap into that? And really, we truly do believe as a company, where our communities thrive, our business thrives. And so we're always going to have our communities at the forefront of what we do. And we're really, once again, very appreciative for this opportunity, Salia, and to the team.
Thank you, Alyssa. Raisibe, you get the final comments. Over to you.
Yes. I'm just going to piggyback on Alyssa's comment. I think, our CEO here at our Africa Zone always says to us, always think about the assurance traffic light guys, right? So you see them at the traffic lights, they're always directing traffic. So in principle, it's actually a low cost solution, but it's impactful. And I think that's going to be really important for us going into the future, building a company, for the next 100 years, that what we do is impactful. It, reaches all communities. And, you know, again, we're able to, educate and create that awareness amongst, our communities, amongst government, and even our consumers. So I'll leave you with that assurance. If you drive past, just think about them. It's such a simple solution, but really, hard to forget. And that's going to be important for us, being impactful.
Absolutely. I think that's going to stick in my mind for I don't know how long now. Hashtag outsurance, circular economy.
Hashtag outsurance, yeah.
So on that note, thank you so much for our presenters who've taken the time to put together the presentations today and share their knowledge and really provide us with some amazing insights. I see that in the chat, Karen has put down some contacts, which is fabulous. Please do see the presenters' websites and ABI. I've also got some amazing other clips which we haven't shown today. So do make contact, do make those networks. In the meantime, Christo, please can you share your screen on just the knowledge sharing committee? I'm hoping that we have a slide, number one, and number two, can we get the Slido just for the last remaining Slido, just so that we can try and get a handle on some of those focus areas that we want to do for our next webinar. We'd like to be, obviously, to make these webinars as relevant as possible and make sure that we're responding to some of the questions that are out there, because there are so many questions, right? Especially circular economy, it's complex. That's why it's not just easy to just implement, but we all need to start, and we need to start somewhere. So if you're able to log on to Slido, please do, yeah, just spitball a couple of topics that you'd really like us to dive deeper into with follow-up webinars. There was something else I wanted to say, which I have now completely forgotten. It'll come to me in a minute. But again, thanks for those who have taken the time. It's really quite amazing. We had a great response for this webinar. It's unfortunate that we didn't have as many join us today as who did register. However, the recording will be made available to all who registered. So that's 93 people, which will still get the recording, and the recording will also be shared on all of our newsletters and updates for ACEN as well. So I want to just make sure that, we are trying to spread the message and the knowledge and the insights far and wide. So to the topics that have come up is circular economy and climate change, financing. Financing is a biggie. Partnerships for change, creativity, systems thinking. Absolutely. I almost think we need like a workshop just on systems thinking itself. Water, biodiversity, digital. These are great. Okay, so there are a couple of themes coming through, which is excellent. Excellent. Thank you. You're welcome to carry on with the active poll. Thank you very much, Christo, for that. Sorry, if you're able to change to just the last slide, just so I can thank the communications team who do put these things together. A lot of hard work does happen in the background to pull the concept together, and then to actually get the presenters online, and to make sure that the communication goes out. So thanks very much to this amazing team, Christo, Tashma, Wakeza, Marie, and David. So yeah, without a team like this, these webinars aren't actually possible. So thank you very much, team. You've done a great job. And thanks everyone again for your time today. And I think we've saved you 4 minutes to your day. And we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. And please drop us a line, have a look at the website, and drop us a line if you're needing any further information or would like to get in touch just generally. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Right.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.